guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we talk all about 9-to-5 jobs and when is the actual right time to step away from your 9-to-5 and jump into full-time entrepreneurship or working for yourself. I know that there is a saying and kind of a stereotype honestly that 9-to-5 jobs are more stable than working for yourself or having your own business, but I'm here to talk a little bit about how that's not always necessarily the case. And I'm gonna tell you kind of the timeline of what it took for me to leave my 9-to-5 job and do Amazon FBA full-time and how it built up into my $1 million business. So if you're interested in seeing the steps I took to ensure that I had stability before I left my 9-to-5, stay tuned. All right, to set the stage for you guys, I have to take it all the way back to when I graduated from college, which was in May 2016. I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey, if you're familiar, and that is where I got my degree in nutritional sciences. So I do have a bachelor's of sciences from there. And when I was getting ready to graduate, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was pre-med at one point, realized it wasn't for me, and then had to basically come up with a plan B as to what I was gonna do with my life. What I did know is that I was gonna have bills to pay, that I was gonna have student loans to pay back, and I really needed to find something stable. And so it kind of happened in a weird way, but I ended up meeting a woman who worked for a company, and she basically gave me her contact information. I reached out to her, and this is how I fell into the career of pharmaceutical sales. So if you don't know what pharmaceutical sales is, it's essentially the people who go into doctors' offices and educate the doctors about the products that they would be prescribing to their patients. And at the time I was selling diabetes medication. And so I would go into these doctors' offices, I would bring samples of the products with me, I would bring them lunch in order to basically make myself useful so I could talk to the doctors, and that was my entire job. So imagine me, I'm like 22 years old or something like that. I don't know anything about corporate life. I don't know what to expect. And my whole entire life has been spent going to school. And so that adjustment from being a full-time student to being a full-time employee was honestly kind of a rough one. I wasn't used to just the structure of the day. I wasn't necessarily used to all of the freedom that I had as far as the job because it was salaried. I didn't have to clock in anywhere. So that really was something that I had to get used to. For you to kind of understand where I was in my life, I had graduated college and I was going to college in New Jersey, and this job that I had applied to and gotten an offer for, my territory where I was going to be seeing my customers was in New York, specifically in Brooklyn. I had to relocate to Brooklyn by myself. I didn't know anything about living in the city. I didn't know anyone that lived out over there. So it was definitely something that I had to figure out. How am I going to relocate? Where am I going to live? What can I afford to buy or rent? And how am I really going to live in this really high cost of living city as a recent graduate from college? So there was a lot going on and I was trying to figure everything out, but I did end up settling, like I said, in Brooklyn, and I was adjusting to this new job where I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. At the time that I was looking at what this job was going to be, what it was going to entail, I really thought that it was just going to be something fun. I don't have to clock in. I get to talk to people. I get to drive around the city. And I really was looking at it through rose-colored glasses, if I'm being honest. I didn't realize how much pressure there would be in such an intense kind of sales position. So I had a rude awakening and I started to kind of see how difficult it could be to gain access to see my customers, to be able to sell them something, right? In order to sell something, you have to be able to talk to the customer, but what happens if they don't have time to see you, or they don't want to see you, or their office staff is making it hard to get access to them? You know, there are other challenges that you have to go through, and I just really wasn't fully prepared for that. On top of the fact that I was living in New York, where it is cold the majority of the year. The summers are great in New York. It's fun. There's always something to do, but when it is cold, ooh, honey, that seasonal DEPRESSION kicked in, and I was miserable. The snow, just everything about it was frustrating. Not having a place to park, it was just a lot. So I knew pretty soon on that I wanted to leave New York and move somewhere else so that I could feel more comfortable. And there were a lot of things that happened at that job at the time where I was trying to leave. And here's one of the lessons that I learned, because I also was taught that working, at a big company that has this incredible reputation is really, really important. And, that's what you should aspire to. And then I got there and I was like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. There's a lot of politics that goes on. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of unspoken rules that are not necessarily made for people like me. Okay, so imagine the structure at this corporate company that's made for a certain type of person, and look at me, not me, if you get what I'm saying. So it was just a lot that I had to kind of understand and accept. And for a little while, I did try to play the game, right? I tried to connect with the right people. I tried to say the right things. I tried to take advantage of the opportunities, free labor, that was given to me in order to move up and, someday become a manager or a director or whatever. And I thought that that was going to be my path to financial freedom, was to work my way up the corporate ladder. And then I started to really think about what I wanted for my life, what I wanted my lifestyle to look like. And I knew that I didn't want to constantly feel like I had to put a mask on to go to work, or constantly feel like I couldn't be my authentic self whenever I'm around my coworkers, or I have to act a certain way if I want them to see me as management material. I didn't like faking it, and that's really all it comes down to. So probably about a year into being at this job is when I started to think like, I've got to find something else, because this isn't going to be the place for me long term. But of course, I can't just quit and have no plan. So that's when I started looking into different streams of income. And this was about a year and a couple of months into me living in Brooklyn. I had heard, and it was announced from our company, that there was going to be a reorganization, which means layoffs, and they were getting rid of a bunch of people that worked there. I knew that I wasn't at risk, and here's one of the things that just always bothered me about these companies, is that it's really, really important for them to always prioritize their bottom line. So if there are layoffs coming, who do you think they're going to want to lay off? Is it going to be the recent college graduate making $55,000 a year? Or is it going to be the employee that's been here for 10 years that's making $200K, that's a lot more expensive to keep? They can hire 4 of the recent grads for the cost of that one more experienced person. And I guess that should have made me feel good, like, oh, my job is safe because I'm new and I'm not getting paid that much. But that really bothered me to realize that even the people that had been there for a long time weren't even safe, right? Like these loyal employees that have been here for years, decades even sometimes, they are just as disposable as I am or the next person is. And that really made me understand that I wasn't valued at that company. And I don't even think that it was company specific. I think it's very hard to find a place where you are truly, truly valued. And if you can find that, you will feel it. You will know that you're in the right place. And for me personally, I didn't feel like I was in the right place. But at the same time, again, I didn't have another plan. So when this whole reorganization was happening, I got an opportunity to move from Brooklyn to Atlanta. And let me just say that that was not a smooth transition. There were a lot of things that happened higher up than me, and ways that I was getting blocked from doing certain things and making certain movements in the company, which I also really disliked. But I did end up being able to make a lateral move to Atlanta. So living in Atlanta was now my new home and my new territory. I got to have a whole new team, a new manager who, to be honest, was an incredible person. A lot of my coworkers were incredible people. And I do think that that makes a difference in how you feel about your job, is the people that you have around you. So I was very grateful for that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that everything suddenly got better, right? So still the politics that goes along with getting promotions and moving internally, and just the access to different opportunities was still unequal, in my opinion. There were people who were getting opportunities that other people weren't even considered for. As someone who values being able to work hard and to be proportionally compensated for my hard work, I felt like I wasn't being compensated for what I was contributing to the team and to the company as a whole. And there are a lot of things that I can say, and I'm not going to get too much into the details because it really doesn't matter. But ultimately, I felt that if I was able to bring certain results that were comparable or exceeding the results of my teammates, that I should be compensated for that. And that's just not how it worked there. For any of you who work in a corporate setting, you know there are rules, there are things. It's just not done that way. We can't just, do this or do that. There's a way we have to go about it. There's a process for everything. And while I understand that that might be important for a big company to have processes and procedures and, ways that they go about things, I simply cannot agree that, people are getting paid unequally for equal contributions. I don't believe in that. And so I started to think more and more like, hey, you've got to find something that you can do where you're in control. You should be the one who determines how much money you make. You work hard, you make a lot of money. You don't work hard, you don't make a lot of money. To me, it's very cut and dry, and that's what I was looking for out of another option, whether that's another job, whether it's starting my own business. I needed more control over my income, more control over my time. So fast forward, now it has been 2 years since I've been at my 9-to-5 job. I've been promoted once or twice. I've gotten a raise here and there. So on paper, I should be happy, right? You're making money, you're good at your job, you should just be happy with what you have. And I didn't feel that way. I was unhappy with the work, I was unhappy with the amount of stress and the amount of pressure, and I wanted something else. And so I remember I went to a meeting at our corporate headquarters, and it was my birthday when I was there. And something just, when I got back home, I knew that that wasn't the place for me anymore. I just knew that this had to be the moment where I decided to do something different. And that's when I started to seriously look into Amazon FBA as a business. And so I started to do a little bit of research, watch some YouTube videos, and just try to figure out, what is this business? Is it something that I can really do? And I remember watching this video from a young girl. She was in her early 20s. She was selling on Amazon, and she was making $40,000 a month. I'm like, $40,000, my eyes lit up, my brain was on fire. I'm like, $40K a month, and she's like my age or a little bit older. That's incredible. So that's really what kind of initially sparked my interest. And then I went down a rabbit hole of doing research and watching these videos and trying to figure out how the business worked. And so from the time that I was seriously interested in selling on Amazon, I would say it was the end of August 2018, all the way up until January 2019 when I launched my very first product on Amazon, I was obsessed. Like, literally my whole life revolved around Amazon selling. How can I pick a good product? What do I need to do? How do I send the products? So I was essentially trying to learn everything by watching, these videos and trying to pick up what I could from Amazon's resources and reading articles and all of these different places I was pulling information from. And when I tell you that I really took a step back from my 9-to-5 job, what I mean by that is, before I made this decision to focus on my own business and pouring into myself, I was spending all of my energy on my 9-to-5. I would go to work, I would do what I need to do, I would come home, I would work on expense reports, I would work on extra projects, I would hop on extra calls, and it just felt like I was getting so drained. Like, there was nothing left for me to give at the end of the day. And I realized very early on that if I'm going to start focusing my energy into my business, I need to have energy to give, right? I can't focus what I don't have. So what I did is I cut back. I stopped accepting these extra leadership opportunities. I stopped doing the most, and I was really just doing what was required of me. And I'm such a big believer in that if you are happy with your 9-to-5, if you love it, if you see yourself there long term, by all means, put as much of yourself into it as you want. Throw yourself into your work if it makes you happy. But I do think for many of us, and maybe I'm projecting, but a 9-to-5 job can just be a means to an end, right? So as long as you're doing your job, I'm not saying to be bad at your job. I'm just saying do what is in your job description, and you're not obligated to do more than what is in your job description. So do that. Stop overextending yourself and, agreeing to do extra things that you're not getting paid for, because that is going to make it harder and harder for you to focus on what is important, which is building something for yourself, if that's what you're trying to do. So during that time, I was spending about 3 to 4 hours a week on my Amazon business. So I would go to my regular job, I would come back and work on Amazon. Sometimes I was up until midnight or later and still waking up and going to my job the next morning. And it was a little bit difficult to balance, I'm not gonna lie. And the real reason for that is I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't know if I was following the right steps. I didn't know if, the information I was getting was up to date or not. So it was tricky for me to kind of figure out what I should be doing. But I was just, doing the best I could with the information that I had. And so finally, I contacted a supplier to make my first product on Amazon. I do have a video where I talk about how I lost $5,000 with the first product that I ever sold on Amazon. That's a completely different story. But I did end up picking a supplier and launching, my very first product, and that was early January 2019. And when I did that, like I said, I lost a bunch of money with that first product because I picked something too competitive. And then I launched a second product, which was also a big mistake because I also picked something that was too competitive and lost about $2,000 with that one. So with my first two products combined, I lost about $7,000, which was a very, very hard pill to swallow, especially considering that all of the money that I had invested into my business was the money I was saving to buy my mom a house. And so even though, yes, it was money that was, I guess, disposable, it wasn't really disposable because it had a purpose. And I took a risk and I decided to use that money that was being saved for something very specific and put it towards my business, because in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, I'm going to spend this money, but I'm going to make it back tenfold. So it doesn't matter. You have to spend money to make money. I really tried to have, an optimistic business mind when it came to spending the money that I needed to grow my business. So unfortunately, like I said, lost money with those two, but with my third product is where my entire life changed and everything took off for me. So I launched this third product and it did really well. It started to sell immediately. I made a profit off of my very first order and things were looking amazing for me. And at that time, I was really, really, really wanting to quit my job. I just felt like I couldn't take it anymore and I wanted to get out of there. But here are a couple of the things that I lined up to make sure that I didn't just quit without having a plan. Number one is that I gathered all of the information and all of the documents that I needed off of my work iPad. You might have a work computer, work cell phone, whatever. I actually had an iPad and a cell phone. So I gathered all of my documents, all of the feedback that I had received from my supervisors, performance reports, all of that, and anything that I could ever potentially need in the future. And this is because I was aware that with my company specifically, and I don't know if this is the case with anyone else, but with my company, once you quit or you were fired or whatever, you would immediately lose access to everything. And so I didn't want to just quit and not be able to gather what I needed, even previous health information in case it was somewhere on my iPad or anything that had to do with my insurance or stocks or anything that was done through my company. I had to make sure that I had all of that information before deciding to leave. So number two is that you want to make sure that your new source of income surpasses your old source of income. Now, some people might say that as long as you're making the same thing from both, then you're ready to quit your job. But for me personally, I like a little bit of extra cushion. And so the way that I broke it down and what it was for me is that at the time that I was leaving, I was making about, I want to say $70,000 or so at my 9 to 5. Maybe it was like 68K, something close to 70. But after all of the deductions, my health insurance, my company car, all of the extra contributions to a bunch of different things, I was making about $3,200 a month after all of that was taken out. It was either 32 or 36, something like that. And so for me, as I'm looking at what I'm making from Amazon, not only do I need to be making that bare minimum amount in salary, but also all of the other perks and benefits that I was getting at that job had to also be supplemented. So, for example, I had a company car at that job. So what would the estimated cost of a car payment be? Maybe it's $300. So now not only do I have to make $3,600, but now I need to make $39 to account for this new cost of a car payment that I would now have to pay. We got free gas. We paid into it, but it was essentially free gas. It was like $100 a month, but it was unlimited. So now that I'm paying for my own gas, what am I gonna have to make in order to make up for that? Am I gonna need $200 for gas per month, $300, whatever it is? So now it's not $3,900, it's realistically $4,200 that I need to be making in order to be breaking even with leaving my 9-to-5 job. There were other things I considered as well, including my health insurance. So I had really, really great health insurance, again, that I paid into, but it was nothing crazy. That compared to me paying for my own private health insurance outright because I would be working for myself, what would that cost? Another $300, $400, $500 that I would have to add on top of that. So as you can see, it's not as cut and dry as I'm making $3,000 a month with my 9-to-5. When I make $3,000 with Amazon, I can quit. It is not that simple. You want to account for any extra perks and benefits that you're getting as well, because you are going to be losing out on that when you leave. Things like maternity leave that I was not going to have working for myself technically, quota trips and company perks that I would have received. So now I'm leaving, I'm not going to get those anymore. So I definitely wanted to have a really good cushion before I left. And for me, honestly, that number was anywhere between $8,000 to $10,000 is what I felt like I would need to make from Amazon in order to comfortably leave my 9-to-5 job. And so I waited until I hit those numbers before I truly considered leaving. The third thing that I wanted to consider were any other benefits that I was getting from the company that I wanted to make sure I received before I left. So at the time that I was there, I did have some stocks with the company, or some kind of like reserved stocks that I would not be able to gain access to until 5 years of being with the company. This was a little under 3 years of being there. So I was going to lose out on that, and I just had to accept it, or else I would have had to stay for 2 more years. And to me personally, it wasn't worth it. But one other thing that I really thought was important was my final bonus check. So we had quarterly bonuses with that job based off of how we performed with our sales. And I knew that I had one coming in mid-June. So at the time where I was making enough from Amazon to step away from my corporate job, it was probably about May. And realistically, I could have left and have been fine, but I wanted that final bonus check for June. I'm sure I would have still gotten it, but for me and just like my comfortability, I wanted to actually have it before I formally quit. And so I knew that I would have to wait until at least mid-June before I received that, before I could make the move. And I'm really glad that I did that, because it gave me another cushion just in case things slowed down with my Amazon business or something went wrong. I would still have a bit more of a safety net with savings. And I made sure that I had savings for my Amazon business as well. It's not like my bank account was on zero, but at the end of the day, it was money that I worked for, it was money that I earned, and I felt that I deserved it. And so I didn't want to leave that on the table by prematurely leaving my job. So I stuck it out for the extra couple of weeks in order to get that check. It was either mid-June or mid-July. It was mid-June or mid-July now that I'm thinking about it, because I didn't end up actually leaving my job until the last day of July in 2019 is when I officially resigned or quit. So the fourth and probably the most important thing to consider is your own mental health. And the reason I'm saying that is some people work well under external pressure, right? If you're in a sales job, you've got your manager who's expecting certain numbers from you, your team potentially expecting certain numbers from you, and some people thrive in an environment like that. However, when you're working for yourself, there's no one external telling you how much money you need to be bringing in, or how many sales you need to make, how many customers you need to get. That is all self-driven. And so if you are the type of person who needs other people to kind of monitor or structure the way that you approach what you do on a daily basis, then working for yourself is going to be difficult. Yes, there are incredible perks. You got to make your own hours, wake up when you want to, do as much or little work as you want to do. You're in control truly of how much you make. So that is great in and of itself on the surface, unless you are the type of person that can't monitor and keep yourself accountable on a regular basis. So you've got to be real with yourself and understand that once you start working for yourself, you are going to have to create the structure that makes the most sense for you. Maybe you do still decide that you're going to work 9 to 5, but for your business instead. Maybe you set yourself up like me. I only work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I have a 3-day work week because that's what works well for me, but those 3 days are hectic and I prefer that. But other people might say, I only want to work 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, whatever it is. So you're going to be the one who's going to have to figure out what makes the most sense for you. And keep in mind that leaving your 9 to 5, even though, again, people say that you're leaving your stability, it's so risky to work for yourself, you know that you're never going to fire yourself. You know that you're the person who determines if you keep doing something, if you pivot, if you change your strategy, everything comes down to you, and there's a lot of power in that. So I'm not saying this last one to scare you or anything like that, but I do want you to know that with great power comes great responsibility, and as long as you are aware of that and comfortable with that, then you will have your bases covered. The final thing I want to say here, and I'm really interested to hear how you guys feel about this, is the concept of giving a 2 weeks notice. Now, I am not here to tell you that you should not give a 2 weeks notice by any means. Do whatever you think is right for you. But what I do want to say is that a lot of these jobs and these companies, your employment is at will. At will employment means that no one owes anyone anything. I can fire you, you can quit, it is what it is. Now, if you are to be fired from a job, most likely you are going to be fired effective immediately. They're not going to give you a 2 weeks notice to fire you. So I like to keep the same energy. I don't necessarily think that you have to or that you owe it to your employer to give them a 2 weeks notice. However, if you really, really love your team, your manager, you know that they're going to be put in a tight position if you were to just quit today and not come in ever again. If you know that that would hurt them and you care, then yes, by all means, prepare them for your departure. Let them know, give them a heads up, and work with them on how to, I guess, transfer your responsibilities over to the next person or whatever. But I don't think that an employer who has treated you badly deserves a 2 weeks notice. But again, it might be a hot take. Some people might say that I'm just saying that because I work for myself, but I definitely am a big believer that you have to make the right decision for you. And if you can't stand to be there for 2 more weeks, what's the point of giving a 2 weeks notice? You know what I mean? Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. But that's really what I have to say about my transition from my 9 to 5 to working for myself full time. And I have been selling on Amazon ever since. So it is a business that has continued to do me right and just open up so many opportunities and doors for me in my life and in the lives of the people around me, the people that I love, my family. So I'm so grateful for it. So if you are nervous about taking that next step, just make sure that you cover your bases, think the decision through. And if you feel like you're the type of person that is going to make it no matter what, you're a hustler, you're a hard worker, you have nothing to fear because you're going to be able to make it work one way or another. And sometimes when you have no other options, that is when you do your best work, right? You either make your business work or you can't pay your rent. So it's going to put, a certain type of fire under you to figure things out. And I think that that is invaluable. That ability to pivot, that ability to work hard, to adapt and do something for yourself. So I believe in you. If this is something that you want to do, by all means, put the necessary pieces in place and make the move when it feels right for you. It's not something that I've ever regretted. I'm so happy that I made the decision to leave when I did, and I hope that this video can be helpful to you as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close out the video. Hope you guys have a great one, and I'll see you in the next one.